Okay. We have to admit, I can admit that one. Laura Myers, you're coming in. Okay. All right, everybody. This is Scott Rader, the Executive Director of the Alabama Water Institute, and I want to welcome to another forum that we've put together with Ed Clark, the Director of the National Water Center. And we're going to talk a little bit today about the strategic plans and opportunities with the Water Center. I know this is something that I've talked to a lot of the faculty about. So this should be a great session to gain some insight in terms of what Ed and his team are doing over there and the sorts of research to operations opportunities that will be out there. So with that, Ed, I want to say thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this. And I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Well, good afternoon, folks. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to join me and join Scott and I in this conversation. I want to make this very much that, a conversation. And so if there are questions, if there are comments, any clarity, this is basically a presentation that focuses on a little bit about where the National Water Center is, the Office of Water Prediction, and where we're headed. And I think as we lay out the chart for the future, also recognizing where we've come in a very short period of time, there are opportunities and potential capabilities for collaboration, particularly as we move forward into this next exciting chapter with AWI and the broader academic community. So I'll just introduce myself. Scott did a great job. My name's Ed Clark. I've been here for about 5 years. I took this position in 2016. I can't believe it's 2021. My background is I'm an engineer. I'm a civil engineer and snow hydrologist by training. So you may wonder what the heck is he doing in Alabama? Well, when the opportunity to lead a national water center came across my desk, I couldn't pass it up. And so I'm really excited to be here. My wife and I have made Alabama our home. We really enjoy it. This is a fantastic university and a fantastic location to be as the cusp of really a new exciting chapter of water prediction, water science, water measurement, and really looking forward to this next phase. So with that said, we can go to my next slide. This is just an outline. They tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. Talk through some of what got us here, our stakeholder priorities, our mission, our organization, our strategic plan, both from the Office of Water Prediction standpoint, from the National Water Center standpoint, and then some recent legislation. And then we'll end with some of the things we're doing internal to NOAA across the NOAA landscape, so that you have a little bit of background on that. And then I'll talk specifically about some pending opportunities, whether they be federal funding opportunities, programs within NOAA, and potential applications through the Cooperative Institute that has been established at the University of Maryland and North Carolina State and Alabama that allows us to kind of a new exciting chapter that happened last year. We really want to thank Dr. Prasad and Steve over at his shop who've really been great at executing that. So with that said, we started this journey back in 2011, 2012. I want to give you a little bit of history about the Water Center. We were a directed appropriation to NOAA in 2008 and 2009 to build a center for severe weather expertise and hydrologic sciences in the Southeast U.S. NOAA had and still has a National Severe Storms Lab, a National Weather Center located in Norman, Oklahoma. And so the palatability of establishing another severe storm center institute was not really something that the agency was looking for. Equally, the university made it very clear that they did not simply want an atmospheric science, weather forecast of the future on campus. They wanted something unique, something that the program could be built around. And long story made extremely short, in 2006 and 2008, my colleagues, my predecessors, Don Klein, Dr. Tom Graziano, who's my boss, colleagues from the Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Geological Survey got together at a cold regions workshop in Hanover, New Hampshire, and began this notion of an Integrated Water Resources Science and Service Consortium, or IRIS, IWRSS. We did make everything an acronym in NOAA, so I apologize if a few of these get out of control. But IRIS there's a roadmap, and I can provide a link here as we get into the Q&A. But IRIS was a vision for the future of water across the 26 different federal agencies that have some role in water prediction, water measurement, water management, like the Corps, and water science. And so what IRIS looked at was the potential to kind of revolutionize, transform our capabilities establish a common operating picture for water resources amongst the federal agencies, but also to envision either a virtual or a physical national center where the federal water agencies could come together with the research community, academia, the private sector, and explore areas of intersection, of opportunity, and of transformation. And so that IRIS plan, Chapter 7 or Chapter 6, was all about this virtual center. That plan, that opportunity, was this directed appropriation that NOAA received in 2008, 2009. And we became the National Water Center, the IRIS National Water Center. We broke ground in 2012. We were given a fantastic place on campus. You know, a lot of times we have research facilities that are associated with the university, but they might be in a research park. So they may be 2, 3, 4 miles displaced. I think all of you know where we are. We're smack dab here in the middle campus. And I really value that position here. And not only do we have the potential in the future to interact more with students and faculty, but we're not off on the edge. We feel very much a part of the University of Alabama and welcome here as a true neighbor and colleague. So you know, that opportunity began in 2012. We took beneficial occupancy in 2014. This facility is a 65,000 square foot building, of which I'm the only person in it right now. But we hope to be back after the COVID-19 experience has run its course. We opened our doors in 2015. I took this position in 2016, and we've been moving ever since. But one of the things we did before we began building the National Water Center was, knowing that we had this opportunity coming, work with our stakeholders, work with river basin commissions across the United States, the Hudson, the Potomac, the Susquehanna, the Delaware, the Ohio, portions of the Mississippi, the Colorado, portions of California, particularly in the Central Valley, but also portions of Sonoma County and the wine country, to really look at what the various data gaps were, what the challenges were. We essentially went out and did a series of workshops and asked folks, river basin commissions and those that they interacted with, what keeps you up at night? And it's not just flooding. You know, there's a misperception within some entities that the National Weather Service hydrology program is just about flooding and flash flooding. I got my start at the Colorado Basin River Forecast Center as a hydrologist and snow forecaster for water supply applications. One of the things we do in the Weather Service is issue, beginning January 1st, we issue a April through July volumetric runoff, probabilistic volumetric runoff forecast for major points across the western U.S. This is a critical component of managing and monitoring our nation's water resources, and is leveraged greatly by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation in terms of how they operate their facilities and how they deliver water rights to their various set of stakeholders and water rights holders. So it's not just flooding. We have issues of drought, water availability, water security, as Mike Vermillion is here to attest to, water quality issues, whether it be where water is coming from, where floodwaters are entraining, particularly detrimental nutrients, to water temperature issues. And of course, all of this is underscored and underpinned and made even worse by the impacts of climate change. So those were the kind of thrust areas that that our stakeholders directed us to, provide more information. And they wanted it at a spatial level detail that was really where they were making decisions. So really provide consistent high resolution analyses, forecast of water budget variables, not just stream flow, but water in the soil column, snowpack, precipitation, evapotranspiration fluxes. All the budget, the variables that comprise a full budget are of use to some, if not many, of our stakeholders across this very diverse and very heterogeneous nation. And the other component of what we do here is making things truly accessible in geospatial format. So you'll see a lot of GIS, remote sensing capabilities scattered throughout the various projects that we have here within the Office of Water Prediction. So that's really what's formulated where we're going. We are very much driven by being responsive as government to the needs, the growing and the shifting needs of our stakeholders, and doing it in a partnered fashion. So we subscribe completely to the philosophy of working with partners as we develop capabilities versus simply throwing it over the transom at the end of the day. Let's see, I'm going to go to my next slide. This is, I'm not going to read this verbatim. This is our vision statement and our mission. We are very much a research to operations organization. That means that we have a very specific and prescribed mission in terms of our operational capabilities. But at the same time, we are also taking high technology readiness level applications, tools, techniques, whatever they may be, and integrating them into our operational systems. And they may be things that operate on our supercomputer that's located in 2 locations, one in the DC region, one in Florida. It may be things that are operated on some of our national dissemination capabilities that are located in College Park, Maryland, and in Boulder. It may be things that we operate here within one of the 2 data centers that we maintain here in the Office of Water Prediction at the National Water Center. Or maybe things that we place on some of the assets that are at the Office of Marine and Aviation Services, Office of Marine and Aviation Operations provides to the NOAA family. These are our ships and our aircraft that we use to fly missions that range from snow and soil moisture survey all the way to counting great whales off the coast of the North Atlantic and everything else in between. And so with that said, we have a unique space here. There's a lot of research within NOAA that takes place. It's geared at the atmospheric science community, the ocean community, but very little is truly hydrology. And so we're constantly looking for opportunities to partner with external organizations to better infuse the best of what's available from the academic sector, from the research sector, into our operations to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our stakeholders and partners. I think everybody has seen the building. Just a little bit about what the Water Center is. Like I said, it is that physical manifestation of the shared mission space of multiple federal agencies, but it is also a conduit to infuse research capabilities that have achieved high technology readiness levels into the operational footprint of not just the National Weather Service, NOAA, but of other federal agencies. One of the things that we operate here have done so since day one is hosting what we call our National Water Center Innovators Program, an associated 7-week summer institute. Some could say it's an incident in and of itself. But this notion of a summer institute where we recruit graduate students from universities across the country, bring them here to Tuscaloosa, allow them to work side by side with our hydrologists, our scientists here in the Water Center, take a glimpse of what the operational cadence of truly providing water resources, science, and services to nation 24/7 looks like, and ask them, what are the thrust areas, what are the cutting edge things that you're thinking of that you could, when exposed to some of the things that we do, how could you make it better? What could you add? How could we look at things differently? We've been doing this Summer Institute for the last 5 years. We skipped 2020 due to COVID. We are planning to do a virtual Summer Institute 2021. I'm happy to say that I've seen at least a couple of applications from the University of Alabama. So we'll continue that grand tradition of having great students from just across the street be part of that cadre, even if it will just be virtual this year. We're 65,000 square feet. We're a LEED Gold building. Our operations center, as you see pictured here in the lower right, is truly 21st century. We have a TV production studio. This is the delivery of the 2019 Spring Flood Outlook, which is, you may recall, we estimated, and unfortunately the prediction was validated, that over 200 million people would see an increased risk of flooding in the U.S. that spring. And as you may recall, the floods from Missouri beginning in March, down the Mississippi, portions of the lower Missouri again, the Arkansas, the lower Ohio Valley, all of that culminated in a very real story in our backyard when the beaches in Alabama and Mississippi were closed due to the hypoxic and harmful algal blooms later in July and August. So again, it's not just the flooding that may happen in the spring, but it's what happens along the coastal periphery as well. And these are all areas where NOAA is working with the National Water Center and with our sister line offices in the National Marine Fisheries, National Ocean Service, to better infuse the best of water science into either what we do here within the Weather Service or what we may do in partnership with folks like the National Marine Fisheries or the National Ocean Service. So there's a lot of opportunity. Again, LEED Gold building, the lights just went out above me. I'll move around here a little bit to come back on. So we have 5 divisions here within the Office of Water Prediction. The majority of our staff is located here in Tuscaloosa at the National Water Center. We do have 2 other offices. We have a small presence at Weather Service headquarters in Silver Spring, Maryland, And we have a very small office up in Chanhassen, Minnesota, that's primarily and historically been focused on our national snow assessment and airborne snow and soil moisture survey program. I'll draw your attention to folks to the row at the very bottom. The 5 divisions the directors are all here with the exception of our geointelligence division. They are service innovation and partnership. This cadre looks at evolving capabilities that meet stakeholder demands, better assessing the stakeholder requirements, testing the products, testing the validity. We also, I say this because it's not just hydrology and water resources that we're interested in. We also, within our Science Innovation and Partnership Division, have a pretty strong emphasis on socioeconomic and behavioral sciences in terms of what it means to have a better sense of water resources capabilities, whether that be an economic value. One of the science and products and services that we provide is something called a hydrologic ensemble forecast service, which provides uncertainty characteristics from hours out through months in terms of our volumetric or peak or any of our manners of the way we can slice and dice our hydrograph volume, peak, probability of dropping below a certain threshold, probability of exceeding a threshold. Well, that program, HEFS, is used by New York City to manage 2 of the reservoirs that supply water to the city. They were able to avoid a $11 billion outlay by leveraging HEFS and better optimizing the reservoir operations. Knowing that type of return on investment is one of the things that SIPD strives to do. It's hard to do, and I think there's opportunities to work with folks, non-traditional partners like the School of Economics or Business School or Communications and our social scientist cohort to better understand what those impacts are. And that's just one example. Another one out in the coast of California in the Russian River Valley. The operation, leveraging the same capability, the operation of Lake Mendocino and Coyote Gulch Dam by the Corps of Engineers to use what we call forecast-informed reservoir operations saves on average 8,000 acre-feet a year of water. And if you look at the market calculations, that's anywhere from $27 to $32 million alone in actual water, let alone the intangible benefits of improvement to the fish ecological habitat and better optimization of some of the wineries in that portion of the country. So SIPD really is a unique dimension here within our traditional science programs within the National Weather Service and within NOAA, that it really is that extension out to the social, economic, behavioral sciences. Moving to the right, our analysis and prediction division focuses on building the best of breed in terms of our hydrologic prediction capabilities. This is the cohort that has developed and implemented 5 successive versions of the National Water Model. This is a group that is leading the effort to re-architect and develop a next generation national water modeling framework in collaboration with some of our federal partners to really look at lowering the bar in terms of better integration with the community. The National Water Model is based on WRF Hydro, has been a very successful platform, but we have been working with the academic community, with our Community Advisory Committee for the Office of Water Prediction, to continue to refine and lower that bar to make sure that a community model really can be just that, community-based, accessible, workable by folks ranging from graduate students to top-notch researchers here in the Office of Water Prediction. Our Geointelligence Division is a group that focuses on data, hydroinformatics, big data issues, as well as remote sensing, and some of our flood condition mapping capabilities. As we get to the end of the presentation, there will be a GitHub repository where just earlier this week we have posted the software and the source code for our flood inundation mapping methodologies. We call it our FIM version 3.0 that shows a continued improvement on previous instances of how we've developed some of the flood inundation mapping capabilities that we're really excited to bring to bear operationally with the continued support across the states and communities around the country. Moving to the right again, our interdisciplinary science and engineering division. This is our almost our internal audit folks. They look at they operate our evaluation program, look at the performance of the various modeling capabilities and forecasting capabilities from the National Water Model, from the 13 river forecast centers that provide the official river forecast, from emerging technologies such as NextGen, and from our ensemble or probabilistic forecasting capabilities that I spoke to earlier, the HEFS. And then finally, our largest division and one that is continuing to grow is our operations division. These are the folks that provide 24/7 reach back capabilities for not just the National Weather Service, but for other federal sectors, and can continue to kind of maintain that watch over our offices here within the Weather Service, but really across the country. You can see that we're supported by a couple other components. Obviously, IT is a huge component of what we do. We also have commitments to project management, and then of course, we are a federal financial management center here within the federal government, so we have our budgetary responsibilities as well. And as I said, I'm down here as a director. I'm also the deputy director of the Office of Water Prediction, and reporting to Tom Graziano and the rest of the Weather Service leadership. So that's enough about bureaucracy. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about some of what the water specific goals are for the Weather Service and for the National Water Center. So this first bullet, this is taken from our 2019 to 22 strategic plan. First bullet is deliver actionable water resources information from the nation from national to street level across all timescales. This really speaks to the commitment to provide that high resolution forecast and simulation of the water budget variables that are so critical to our nation. The minutes to months river forecasts that quantify atmospheric and hydrologic uncertainty. This is the Hydrologic Ensemble Forecast Service. The provision of probabilistic information, whether it be volumetric, peak flows, low flows from hours out to a full water supply year, is the heart and soul of that HFS deployment. And our data center here in Tuscaloosa plays a huge role in enabling that capability of the 13 river forecast centers across the country. Improving our forecast of total water. So I spoke to the example of 2019. We are fully committed to working with the National Ocean Service to initially couple with something called the ADCIRC model, the STOFS, the Extratropical Storm Surge Operational Forecast System, to the National Water Model. So we, for the first time ever, provide that comprehensive forecast capability of the total water surface elevation in the coastal zone. This is a capability that will be launched here in 2022. It really does make that connection with the coast. The other important thing here, and one that I think is ripe for collaboration, is not just coupling with the water surface with STOFS, which is a 2D ADCIRC-based model, but looking at the hydrodynamic models that are operated by the National Ocean Service, looking at circulation issues, looking at salinity issues, and potentially looking at water quality issues, whether it be the transport of nutrients into the coastal periphery, and what happens, what downstream processes can be linked to things like a fully integrated national freshwater ocean water model. Can you link biological models to that? Can you link harmful algal bloom models to that? The answer, I think, is yes. The question is the nuances of how we do that. But as we create these new intelligence data sets, new intelligence capabilities, I think we can better operate, better plan, better predict, and better respond to challenges that may have their origin inland or manifest. And then finally, we've been tasked to lead the federal flood inundation, real-time forecast flood inundation mapping effort amongst the federal agencies. And I'll get to the authorizing language that was signed into law just this past New Year's Eve. But this is literally, when I describe our FIM capabilities, it is putting water on the map. 2010, I had just returned back to Washington, D.C., and I was asked to put together a testimony for Gary Carter, who was leading what is essentially the Office of Water Prediction at that time. This was right after the Nashville floods. And then Senator Alexander asked Mr. Carter, he said, "I can see a tornado coming across, coming through my community on my computer." I don't know that we were using cell phones or smartphones in such ubiquity at that time. He said, I can see a tornado coming across my community on my computer, or I can see it on the TV. When am I going to see that for water? Or how come I cannot see that for water? Well, the reality is we don't have an observing network like the Weather Service's Doppler radar that looks at water. We have a fantastic water observing system that's operated by the USGS, but they take observations at approximately 8,000 to 9,000 stations across the country. And so linking the data and the models and that mapping is what will allow us to really have that look at the neighborhood or street level of where water is, where it's not, when it's going to get here, and when it's going to recede. That is so essential for our emergency management partners. FEMA has asked us for years. I've been working with Chris Bond since 2014. He's their geospatial data lead. He says, Ed, I can't do anything with the blob. And what he means is if a polygon is drawn that says, there was likely to be flooding over portions of 3 states in the southeast, he can't use that as actionable intelligence to either pre-position supplies, respond to a flood event, or put folks in the field to assess the actual impact. He needs a much more refined set of information. So this flood inundation mapping goal here, and also with it's a Department of Commerce level goal, is really, really exciting for us. We're excited to launch this from Tuscaloosa. All right, so this is going to be a little bit of bureaucracy 101, but I think the best way to describe where we're going and what we intend to do is to kind of walk you through a little bit of what's in our strategic plan. So this is a little bit of background. We have a number of mandated activities that come directly from our appropriators, the Senate, and/or are authorized by Congress, which is a function of the House. So together, we have some fairly strict marching orders in terms of what we're expected to do, when we need to accomplish it, the resources that we're allocated to do that. This plan has been developed in collaboration with those goals in mind, from the Department of Commerce level, the NOAA level, the Weather Service level. It involves all of our national centers, our river forecast centers, which I mentioned there are 13 across the country. And it involves all 122 weather forecast offices that span from Guam in the Pacific, all the way to Alaska, all the way to Key West and Puerto Rico. So the Weather Service has a pretty big geographic footprint if you look at the OCONUS and CONUS regions. We also have a very dense network. We're in every congressional district across the country. We're in every county. We provide services to every state, every city, every municipality. So we go wide and we go deep on a lot of weather and water-related science and service questions. And finally, the last stuff is just some of the folks we've vetted this through, our leadership, what we call our field directors, our community advisory committee for the Office of Water Prediction, which is run by a group called the University Corporation for Atmospheric Research. And then also internal to the Weather Service, we have a NOAA water team that has representatives from all 5 line offices within the organization. As you can see here, these are our long-range goals. It's not that it's going to take us a long time to get there, but these are evolving, complex challenges. So we envision and are currently providing critical water budget variables and stream flow, improving the accuracy of our forecast capabilities from minutes out to years. Now, we are not a long-range water availability forecasting group. That is more in the purview of the Climate Prediction Office within NOAA, and potentially within the U.S. Geological Survey and some of their water availability studies. Nonetheless, we do occupy a very unique space in the federal agencies where prediction is entirely in our swim lane. With a full range of hydrologic extremes, from impact-based decision support services for rapidly onsetting floods to the prolonged and protracted battles we face when we have long-term drought, particularly in the western half of the U.S. But it's not unheard of, and it's not unknown that drought and flash drought can manifest itself in the more humid regions. And the first year I was here in 2016, we had, I think we had 76 days without rain. Fires up in Gatlinburg, in portions of the southern Appalachia, looked a lot like what we see in the western U.S. So it's not just floods; it is that full suite of water availability. I spoke to this notion of total water and working with the National Ocean Service. Clearly an area when we talk about coastal resiliency that is going to be really, really imperative in the next decade and years to come beyond that. Our interactions, we know very little about the key parameters that drive hydrology. We have great models, we have great conceptual and physically based models, but the parameterization of the heterogeneity of the land surface throughout the nation is pretty tough. So better understanding the interaction of surface water and shallow aquifers as it relates to water availability in our streams and rivers is really of key interest to us. We're exploring water quality issues. I talked about harmful algal blooms. One of the other biggest drivers for this is coming from our National Marine Fisheries Office. They have a mandate to protect and to manage the critical salmonoid species in the western U.S. And water temperature, whether it be in channel, in Sacramento, or off the coast, is extremely important to them. better predicting that and helping to understand when certain thresholds like 56 degrees Fahrenheit, which basically destroys the reds that are the juvenile salmon in Sacramento. Knowing that, predicting that, there's ways to mitigate, either whether it be by partnered operations with Bureau of Reclamation or other potential actions that can be taken. As I talked about earlier, we are, and I'll show here in a couple slides, moving forward into a re-architecting of the National Water Model and really getting at a broad community platform, much like the weather research forecast or WRF models for the atmosphere allows rapid infusion, rapid testing, rapid development of capabilities in the academic sector that can then be infused back in the federal sector. We work closely with a professor out of the University of California, San Diego, and Hillary has said in the past that she would love nothing more than for her students to be leveraging the National Water Model framework as a basis for their PhD research. And I think that speaks to this notion of, can the federal government provide a kind of a platform that better enables water resources modeling and forecasting research that then can be picked up by multiple different agencies for the very specific applications they have. The Corps of Engineers may be looking at a model and a simulation process that's far different from what the GS does, USGS does. It's far different from what we may do here at the National Water Center in terms of forecasting minutes to years, or minutes to months to a year time frame. But they can all leverage the same type of framework, the same component model pieces that would go into that. And then finally, this is a little bit inside baseball, but the vision within NOAA is really to enable in the next decade a unified forecast system. So bringing together the currently uncoupled atmospheric, hydrologic, cryospheric, and ocean models, allowing them to interact and to fully couple, so two-way dynamicity between these different modeling components is part of this vision for a unified forecast system. We're working hard to make the National Water Model the component that does not only the land cover, land simulation processes, but also doing the hydrology right. So when we have ponded water from a flooded plain, that gets back up as available fluxes to the atmospheric models for the convective, allowing weather models to be picked up and better forecasting those conditions, the conditions that follow downstream from that. So how are we doing this? So there's kind of three thrust areas. And I promise I will not read through each of these, but if you do have questions, please feel free to ask. We are working to advance our water prediction capabilities. That is solidly what the mission of the National Water Center is in the Office of Water Prediction. We are the water prediction and the hydrology forecasting arm of the National Weather Service. We do that through supporting the 13 weather forecast centers and the 122 weather forecast office who issue the watch warning advisory products and the official forecast. We come in and we provide additional background guidance with things like the National Water Model, like our National Snow Data Simulation System and the National Snow Analysis. The second thrust area is investing in our infrastructure. I'll get to that here in a little bit. And the third is, how do we maintain and cultivate workforce excellence? How are we working to attract and to train and educate the next generation of water resources scientists and engineers? And that is largely a function of what we are attempting to do through the Summer Stoop, but speaks to opportunities that could come through National Science Foundation, grants, through other funding opportunities that are getting at this notion of better preparing, better training, better educating the workforce that we know we will need to have in the coming years and decades. So these are lists I've mentioned before. These are lists of a lot of our operational infrastructure. We have a keen interest in big data, geospatial analyses that includes remote sensing. I think it's going to take not just the next generation of water sensors that are in situ, but the integration of airborne and satellite assets to really help, not only parameterize and better improve our modeling capabilities through validation, verification, but really get a better understanding of the water's movement across the land surface and across the globe. So building a little bit more on this operational infrastructure, looking at impact-based decision support services, working not only to produce a better forecast or better scientific evaluation, better model, but working to better communicate that. And I know I said this before, but I want to stress this. We are committed to working with non-traditional academic partners like communications, like social science, like economists, to better understand, better tailor, and customize our information for the plethora of stakeholders that we have out there. I think that's a really unique area and one that I'm really excited about exploring in the coming years. Within IRIS, we have this notion of creating a national common operating picture for water resources. I referenced the Nashville floods. It was a kind of a dark day for Weather Service and for Army Corps of Engineers because we were so disconnected with what was happening at Old Hickory Dam. There were assumptions that were made that we found to be pretty darn wrong when literally the light of day came up that Sunday. Data integration, analysis, dissemination, forecast capabilities. We could constantly have ways to improve this. This gets to not only the social science of better understanding the water resources information, but better understanding how people use it, how they respond to it. And the intrinsic value of a clairvoyant forecast is absolutely zero if folks don't know what action to take to take advantage of that information. And then again, a little bit inside baseball here, but as part of the National Weather Service, we are national critical infrastructure, and we do have a function to play within our continuity of operations, both within the Weather Service, within the NOAA mission, but also across the federal family. So that is, quite frankly, when we pause there, this role that we play is somewhat a challenge. It's certainly a great benefit, but it is somewhat of a challenge because it means that we have a higher security posture and have certain thresholds and certain actions and visitors that we simply can't accept a level of risk. So, working with the Alabama Water Institute, I think there are ways for us to quote unquote meet in the middle of the street or be on campus so that our expertise is not behind a secure perimeter that is only penetrable by a few folks. We want to be able to be in the academic community. I really thank Mike and Scott and the Alabama Water Institute for creating that opportunity to kind of let us come to AWI and share our ideas and potential opportunities, because it's just as an operational organization alone, it's harder for us to do that. And it's essential that we do it, that we do continue to look at ways to collaborate. I'll have a slide on this a little bit later, but both internal to NOAA and externally through the National Science Foundation, there are a number of opportunities for collaboration. I referenced the Summer Institute. We work very closely with the U.S. Geological Survey, with FEMA, with the Army Corps of Engineers, with Bureau of Reclamation. There is a group called the Consortium of Universities for the Advancement of Hydrologic Science, Incorporated, QUASI, who is our partner in executing the Summer Institute. QUASI has over 135 member institutions across the U.S. and some internationally. And so they're a great partner, great collaborator in terms of not only working with students in the Summer Institute, but really to go across the board for infusion of research and exciting capabilities back into our operational portfolio. And let's see, continued stakeholder engagement. I spoke to the social science piece, other things that are kind of coming down the board. And then, of course, finally, one of the things I'm lucky to be able to do is lead a cadre of about 110 people and watch them grow, watch them mature, watch them stretch into new skills and new capabilities. That is something that myself and Tom Graziano were absolutely committed to. And I think, one of the things that we could continue to explore over the next couple of years is what does it mean to have an operational workforce that is on campus and can either provide opportunities for mentoring, for education, but also can be educated and mentored by folks within the academic community. It's kind of an exciting area that's unique to where we are today here in Tuscaloosa. All right, I'm going to hit these real quick because I want to take time for questions, but this is a roadmap of how we've gotten here, and it really tracks our appropriations. Like I said earlier, we're not a granting organization. Our budget is controlled to the dollar in terms of delivering on a couple key components, a couple new services, while maintaining the operational support that we provide for the 13 forecast centers and the hydrology program. So in 2015, we began a series of program change summaries. And effectively, these are our budget initiatives that, when funded, allow us to do things. First off was in 15, program change summary that allowed us to develop the national water model. It was supposed to be a 5-year demonstration. It became a 1-year operational implementation. Coupling with that was work for water resources data services, water resources evaluation capabilities. In 2016, we added to that the work to explore hyper-resolution modeling, which will manifest itself in some of the capabilities in our next-gen framework, our ensemble prediction capabilities, and then we really began working in earnest to couple a flood inundation mapping, real-time forecast flood inundation mapping with our new national water model and the existing forecasts that are available from the river forecast centers. And those are being demonstrated today and will be operationalized in the ensuing years, again, dependent on the available funds. Integrated water prediction list is just a fancy name for the coastal coupling. That is on track for implementation in 22. Our operations center, staffing that to the tune of about 48 folks, is one of the milestones that we have organizationally, and that's tracked by folks on the Hill. And then just in 2019, through some efforts or some funding opportunities with what we call disaster supplemental appropriation bills, we've been able to explore this next gen framework for enhanced and involved water modeling capabilities. And then we are also just at the tail end of 19 have begun this investigation requirements gathering for water quality issues, beginning with temperature, focusing on salinity, but then also going out in time to other components of this. We're not going to be an aqueous chemistry prediction group. That's beyond what we can really do with the capabilities that we have at hand today. But can we use proxy information? If we know where runoff is coming from, say the Ohio Valley versus Missouri, can we make some assessments about what that component will look like as it reaches the coast and as it interacts with those different habitats? And I think the answer to that question is yes, but the specifics of how we do that is going to take some pretty sharp minds. Another eye test. This is taking us out into the future. So these are the capabilities that will be evolved in the next couple of years, beginning in 2021 with the full continued implementation of versions of the water model, our ensemble forecasting capabilities. You see in the out years that we pick up coastal coupling with hydrodynamic models, that we build out our infrastructure to support 100% of support the provision of flood inundation mapping capabilities for the entire nation, for all users that can access that. That is simply a function of scaling infrastructure, compute, and service delivery infrastructure so that we can meet those demands. There's two pieces of authorization I just wanted to make folks aware of. One is the Floods Act, which is making its way through Congress. The other was public law that was passed on December 31st. It's called the Coordinated Oceans Observation and Research Act, but if you Google S914 or Public Law 116271, Section 3 of that authorizes the National Water Center to do the activities you see here, really to take the lead in terms of our operational hydrologic forecasting capabilities across NOAA and within the federal family. So we're extremely excited to see this language, and it really does, having the appropriation that allows you the resources to do what you need to do, but then having the authorization that specifically says, thou shalt do this, is the two pieces of government that come together to create very successful programs. So it may seem somewhat bureaucratic, and perhaps it is, but it is essential to establishing the water center's permanence here, and not something that can be taken away in the future. I'll kind of skip over this. One of the things we do across NOAA is work collaboratively to address water issues that are not just part of the Weather Service's purview. And so if you look at these 5 societal challenges, one obviously is not water related, but the other 4 are looking at water availability and quality issues, coastal resiliency, or coastal ocean dynamic resource management, and extreme events and cascading hazards. What does it mean to evacuate a community for a flood in a pandemic? Those types of intersections of physical science and the geomorphological componentry, earth system science with health is not something I thought I would have to contemplate in my career. But nevertheless, as we make decisions now in terms of to evacuate communities, not to evacuate communities, how do the emergency managers have the information they need from the the extreme event itself to better integrate what they must now manage in terms of these cascading hazards, the pandemic type response that is also potentially something that does not allow for taking people to a shelter, taking people to a community center. Those are the types of questions that we have to ask, not only of the physical science, nervous system science, but of the social scientists and the emergency management community to really better understand that. And then this fifth one here is we anticipate in the decades to come that there will be increased emphasis on space weather and the vulnerabilities that we face from that hazard. So with that, I'm going to move quickly into a couple of collaboration opportunities, then open it up for questions. As I said, we're not a granting organization, but we do work closely through through NOAA Research, or the Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research, OER, through the JTTI program. I know there's been a few successful submissions from Alabama in the past couple of years. We also have the U.S. Weather Research Program. This is a broader pool of funding. It's an annual announcement for things related to weather, water, and climate science. There's also the Climate Program Office, who has also a federal funding opportunity that's not listed here. We work with the Collaborative Science, Technology, and Applied Research Program, or CSTAR, for certain opportunities. And then we internally have funded and will continue to fund the Cooperative Program for Operational Meteorology and Education, or COMET. These are smaller awards on the tune of $15,000 to $40,000, but they oftentimes become seed money that can then lead a PI to cultivate a relationship with the Office of Water Prediction with the National Water Center and be more successful, potentially be more successful for other funding opportunities, whether it be from National Science Foundation or from these programs listed above, like JTTI or USWRP. Finally, Alabama became a member of the Cooperative Institute for Satellite Earth System Studies. This is one of NOAA's cooperative institutes run out of University of Maryland and North Carolina. We actually hire, through CSIS, we hire staff here in the National Water Center. We have 8 folks on hand. They range from geospatial scientists to software engineers, system admins, physical scientists, meteorologists, hydrologists. I put 2 stars there by the GIS specialist just to flag for AWI and for the faculty and staff at Alabama is that we will be announcing 2 positions here in the not too distant future for early career GIS specialists to work in our flood condition mapping program. So those are the types of folks that we'd like to hire. If we can find them as graduates from Alabama, all the better. And finally, this is some of our social media presence. Please feel free to reach out to this email address above. It goes to our Service Innovation and Partnership Division Director, Jocelyn Burston, but it's also monitored by my senior team and myself. And I think with that, I think I'm done. Stephanie, hopefully people are still here. And
I am still here. Thank you, Ed. So if you have any questions, please just unmute yourself, or you can put it into the chat box and I will ask the question for you. Thank you. Any questions? Oh, there's one in the chat. Thanks, Ed. How would you suggest to connect and build tier 1 researcher to researcher relationships with staff at the National Water Center? For example, to pursue a funding opportunity, should we work through you or other point of contacts?
So, well, I think first, we want to look for opportunities that grow both the Water Center, but also grow a program potentially at a university like my alma mater, the University of Utah, or University of Alabama. And so, looking for those intersections early, having conversations that like this, we're happy to do that. As we pursue activities through potentially NSF, through some of these other funding opportunities that are more internal to NOAA, I think the best thing is open dialogue. And so I'm happy to talk. I'm happy to act as the point of contact to reach down into our team. Our individual team members themselves, outside of our division directors, because we're a projectized workforce, we have mostly to the hour people's allocations charted out for a year to 2 years time frame. But if we know early enough that there will be an opportunity to collaborate with the external PI, we can build those types of activities into our our program. The bottom line is it's better for us to know that that's happening sooner than later, so it allows us to adjust and to adjust our schedules and plans to make sure that we're all successful in those types of activities.
Thank you. Any other questions? To follow up on this question, Dr. Stephen Burian would like to know, given what you just noted, how much freedom do National Water Center staff have to pursue creative scholarly work beyond their day-to-day tasks?
That's a good question, Dr. Burian. So trying to answer this is within reason. We work with folks. If we have a proposal process within the Office of Water Prediction where folks are contemplating additional responsibilities and activities, whether it be extracurricular, we like to have that. Again, we like to have that dialogue with the team members as they're formulating those ideas. Oftentimes, because we are using appropriated funds to accomplish very specific tasks, unless we build for that early on, it's really hard for us to say, hey, spend 25% of your time working on this project. If we have folks that we know that there is a potential opportunity coming down the pike, we can plan that in. But I don't want to use the word limited freedom. There is some flexibility, but the flexibility is directly proportional to the advancement of the program overall. So let's take for example, there's a great opportunity to partner with UA on a new technique for flood inundation mapping. Well, we can build that into our folks that are working on evolving our flood inundation mapping libraries and tools and technologies. That's fairly easy to do. We just have to know that ahead of time. It'd be a little bit harder to have the lower technology readiness level activity that says, hey, we want to explore the potential linkages between the, energy, electrical, utilities, and water temperature forecasting in channel forecast, because we're interested in what happens when a power plant can no longer generate their full allocation, their full allotment because of deregulation, because they can't discharge the water into a river that's already too hot. Something like that's kind of a little lower technology readiness level. It's not directly related. To me, it's a fascinating question. What happens when hydroelectric or when power generators can't discharge warm water into a river because they'll face fines or environmental degradation? What does that mean? In a situation like that, we may have some folks that could be available, but it's probably not going to be 40 or 50% of the time. That's another question. Good question. The salary for federal employees cannot be included in budget. We could potentially look at bringing additional folks on if they met the security requirements through the Cooperative Institute to support collaborations. But that's something I'll have to actually run by legal. But for a federal employee, no, salary cannot be augmented. Again, I want to underscore how critical it is that Alabama is a member of a Cooperative Institute, because that does give us this flexibility. If Alabama was not a member of CSIS, then that flexibility would not be there. So it's a really big accomplishment, a great accomplishment that UA is in the position they are in today.
Great. Any other questions? No, I think if not, then Mike.
Yep, I'll take it from here. Again, I appreciate Ed and taking time out of his busy schedule to go over these slides that he did in the future of the National Water Center. Just as a note, it has been recorded and it'll be posted up on YouTube, so that if you wanted to go back and review some of the slides, it'll be there for your perusal after the fact. Again, thank you for everybody that joined in. We had quite the good crowd that listened in to Ed, and I hope that everybody has a great afternoon.
Right.
Thank
Thanks,
you, everyone.
Thank you.